Hi, in conjunction with Bravo Programs of America, I'd like to present this tutorial on auto insurance basics. My name is Krystal Pedersen, and I'm a supporter of Bravo Programs of America. I've got a little bit of a presentation here, so let me just share my screen. Give me one moment here. All right. So to start with, auto insurance is not a one size fits all kind of thing. So with that being said, every policy should fit your unique needs and situation. Cost always matters, but it should be weighed against the cost of not having that coverage. At the end of the day, it's a balance, and you have to decide for yourself, is it something I can afford each month? And is it worth it to have the coverage? A good insurance agent will, of course, ask questions. They're going to care about you and try to help you stay within budget as well. If you feel like you're not being looked out for or you're not understanding the coverage, then, you can always look elsewhere. So, with that being said, let's see, when do you need auto insurance? So, it's important to always get quotes before you buy the car that you're going to buy. Vehicles do vary, or the prices vary a lot by the kind of car. So sometimes a vehicle that you think you can afford with the loan or just based on its price, it could change based on the insurance price for it. And maybe that car won't fall into what you can afford any longer based on that insurance price. So it's always important to get the quotes well before you're ready to buy that car and before you've set your heart on just one. Also, some companies have a 3 to 7 day waiting period after you make payment before the policy is effective. So it's important to ask when you're getting quotes, does this policy start immediately, or do I need to get it, 3 days to a week before I pick up that car and I'm ready to buy it? Also, you'll always need to get insurance before registering your vehicle at the Secretary of State. Um, in regards to the amount of coverage you need to have just to be state legal, in the state of Michigan, it's a no-fault state. So what that means is basically everybody who has insurance, if you have a claim or an accident, you're always going to go back to your own insurance to pay the claim. You're never, it does basically, it doesn't matter whose fault the accident is, you always go back to your own insurance. Now, what's required in the state of Michigan is liability coverage, property damage, and PIP coverage. A lot of some common terms for those would be PLPD, one way, no fault insurance. Those all mean the same thing. Just it means that the minimum coverage, which is, like I said, those three: liability, property damage, and PIP. Um, for your reference, the minimum coverage that you have to have on the vehicle, that does not include damage to your vehicle. It is just those three coverages, which we're going to go over. Liability coverage, the first one that you're required to have, protects you from being sued and protects you from lawsuits. Basically, how that works is instead of, if you're in an accident and you're at fault, and the other party is trying to sue you for pain and suffering, maybe they have some medical bills they had to pay. If they're trying to sue, they're going to have the option to go after you directly or take the insurance company's settlement. And that settlement option or that amount that they'll take, that is the amount of coverage. So basically, we always recommend to have enough coverage that is going to be more than your assets and income. And that because if the insurance company is offering more coverage, why would they sue you? It doesn't make sense. So it's to protect you from being sued. The next is property damage. So property damage is like if you hit a mailbox or you hit a building, it's damage to property. It can also be a stationary vehicle that is parked and unoccupied. That also counts as property. Um, in the state of Michigan, that's what it is. But if you do drive out of state, this coverage, I always recommend to have it a little bit higher because if you are at fault for an accident outside of the state of Michigan, in a state that's not a no-fault state, then you may be required to pay the damage to someone else's vehicle. That's not how it's done in Michigan, but when you're out of state, that's when actually the property damage would kick in and help you pay the damage to that other person's vehicle, since it's not the same law from state to state. And the third coverage that is required is PIP coverage. This stands for Personal Injury Protection, PIP. It is the medical portion of your auto insurance. The different coverage options that are available to you is going to be dependent on what kind of health insurance that you have. A majority of you guys being young drivers and maybe just going out on your own, you might qualify for Medicaid. The minimum PIP option is 50,000 with that, but it's important to know the things that are not covered with your medical insurance. And this is any kind of medical insurance. It's just important to remember PIP covers this, your medical insurance does not. So when you're selecting a coverage, physical therapy usually has limits with whatever medical insurance you have. PIP helps cover after those limits. Auto home or auto modification. So if you're handicapped and you need to renovate your home to be handicapped accessible, or your auto to, if you lose a limb or something and you need to get a modified automobile, those kind of things are covered through PIP insurance. They're not covered through your medical insurance, though. Also, if you needed a caretaker or services that you can no longer perform, like for instance, if you can't cut your grass because you broke your leg and you need to pay a service to come cut your lawn, that's what that is there. And last but not least, work loss. So let's say if you're out of work for 6 months now because you got into that auto accident, PIP would also cover that work loss during that time as well. Now, some coverages that are not required to be state legal, but are very important and something you should consider, are comprehensive and collision coverage. When someone says full coverage, that's really all they mean is that the vehicle has comprehensive and collision coverage. Um, Comprehensive is going to be if you are like rock hits your windshield, you hit an animal, theft, vandalism. Collision is going to be if you hit another vehicle hits you, or if you run into an object. Um, Now, deductibles can change your price, but basically, you're going to have a few different deductible options when you get car insurance. The higher the deductible, the lower your price is going to be, but the more that you are going to have to pay out of pocket if something happens. There are some options in the state of Michigan with collision, even where you might have that deductible waived if you're not at fault for it. Um, it's important to know if you have or are considering a loan or a lease that there are usually higher requirements, and they usually do require you to have full coverage or comprehensive and collision coverage with a loan or a lease. Um, and if you ever pause your coverage or put it in storage, it's important to always check with them. But again, some coverages that are not in the term full coverage but are still important to consider are going to be rental car coverage and emergency roadside service. Rental car coverage is for example, if you get into an accident and your car is being repaired for 2 months, that's the average amount of time it takes to repair a vehicle after an accident, right now at least. This would be the cost to rent a vehicle from, your typical Enterprise or Hertz or whatever rental car facility that you have to pay that daily cost. Emergency roadside service would be the cost to get a tow if your tire pops or if you lock your keys in your car, that kind of thing. So it's important to know that just because you say full coverage, it does not mean that you have rental car emergency roadside service. Those are outside of that term that you should consider. Now, what should you do if you have an auto accident? First thing first, stay calm and always get a police report. Even if you're at fault, definitely still call the police. You're going to want to have that documented because if you don't, it's a he said, she said kind of game, and it's better to have whatever happened on record. You just need to share the facts and be descriptive. Never admit faults. That's the officer's job to determine. Just share the facts and be descriptive. Make sure that if you're ever in an accident, Of course, exchange info with the other party. Take photos as long as you're in a safe location. Don't put yourself at risk to take them. But if there is the ability to take photos in a safe location, we always recommend to make sure that photos are taken. Um, so with that being said, also, if it's not an emergency, we always recommend call your agent, your insurance agent, before filing a claim, not the call center. So, whatever phone number you have for your insurance agent, if it's a brokerage or you have an individual agent, perfect. That's what we're looking for. But if the phone number that you call for your agent always brings you to a call center, that they automatically have to report damage. I recommend calling your agent first if you have one to get recommendations for how to go forward with the claim before calling that call center if you have to, or before calling the claims department. If you don't have a specific insurance agent, which you might not, if your company is primarily a call center, you're always welcome to call me. I'm always willing and able to give you advice on what to do. Um, Now, with that, in the state of Michigan, since it's a no-fault state, what that means is if there's no other party in the accident, it's almost guaranteed to be at fault. So, for example, in this picture you see, this gentleman has driven straight into a very, very large pothole. In the state of Michigan, this would automatically be considered at fault, even though it's a ginormous, it's a huge pothole. Sometimes there are ways to try to make a claim through the state of Michigan for them not repairing it in a timely manner, but those aren't always guaranteed to pay out. But if you call your insurance company, it's automatically going to be at fault if you hit something, there's no other party, like backing into a garage or driving into a ditch, slipping on ice and going somewhere. So it's important to know, because if you ever have damage that's a small amount and there's nobody else involved, sometimes it can be better to avoid higher rates later on and pay what you can out of pocket if it's a small amount of damage. Again, this is something your agent can advise on if you call them first. Just basically, if you have an at-fault accident, again, it does equal higher rates usually. You can always get an estimate first if you're not sure how much it's going to cost. If you're pretty sure it's at fault, you backed into a mailbox or your garage and you're fairly sure and you want to see how much it's going to be out of pocket first, most shops will give you an estimate for free. Now, some factors that are going to impact your auto insurance price are going to be your driving record. So that's tickets, accidents, your insurance history. So that means how long you've been with the company, how often you cancel, how often you move companies, generally speaking. And if you've not had auto insurance, that also impacts it. Also, in the state of Michigan, they can't look at your credit score, but they do look at factors that affect your credit score, like bill pay, for example. So if you're paying your bills on time with, especially with the insurance company, that can help your rate actually. Also, where you live and the type of car you drive can all affect your price. Some things you can do to help keep the cost down, because those aren't always controllable aspects, is one, never let your insurance lapse. If you sold your car and you're waiting to get a new one, usually most companies have an option to pause the policy. Put it on pause, don't have any coverage during that time, and then when you get your new vehicle, it's the same policy and you get the same loyalty discounts built up. A lot of companies might have an option to put it in storage too. So if you still have the car, but maybe it's just not working at the time, or you're going to be out of town for a month and it's in the garage, a lot of companies have options to put it in storage. Again, if you have a loan or lease on the car, make sure you verify that this is okay with them, because most of them require full coverage, and this would not be full coverage. Any of those options, though, putting it in storage or putting your insurance on pause, that is not coverage to legally be on the road or drive. So it's important to note this is only for if you either don't have a car or you're 100% sure you won't be using it during that time. Another way to keep the cost down is to shop around. If your company is giving you a really, really high rate, it's definitely worth it to check with other companies, but don't switch too often because that can affect your insurance history. If you're switching every 6 months, that can actually bring your price up in the long run. It might save you money in the short term, but it may increase your price over the years, especially because with most companies, it takes around 2 to 3 years to build up loyalty discounts. And if you're switching every 6 months, you're never going to qualify. Some other discounts you can ask about that a lot of companies have are good student discounts. You guys are all in school, so if you're getting above 3.0 GPA, that's usually the main standard. Or safe driver or telematics programs. These are usually programs that give you a discount based on driving habits. Or bundling renter's insurance. Even if you don't own the place that you live in, or if you're just renting, or even if your name's not on the place, like you're in a dorm, you can still get renter's insurance because it's insurance to protect your belongings. And most of us have belongings. So as long as you have things to insure and an address, you can usually get renter's insurance, and that can also help the cost of your auto insurance significantly, as well as protect your belongings if there's a fire or they get damaged. Some things that insurance does not cover is going to be your basic wear and tear. So this is kind of like your tires wear down, they just need to be replaced. That's not going to be covered by insurance. Any kind of maintenance, like regular oil changes, or if you fail to do regular maintenance on it and you fail to change your oil or you fail to do proper things to maintain your vehicle, that's not going to be covered by insurance. So as an example, if you let the oil run out and it's completely gone and it causes your engine to overheat and explode, that's not going to be covered by insurance. So it's important when you get a vehicle to know what kind of maintenance you need to have on it, and do your regular maintaining. Also, anything covered by the warranty usually is not covered by insurance. Warranties will usually cover any kind of mechanical breakdowns to the vehicle or specific parts that might go out within a certain time period. For that information, I would check with the dealership when you're buying the vehicle. If you're buying this from another private party, you're more than likely not going to have a warranty still left on it unless it's a manufactured warranty through the brand. Um, Another thing that insurance doesn't cover is going to be faulty parts, like if a part just breaks or shop work that's poor. So if the shop doesn't repair your vehicle correctly or misses something, it's not going to be something covered by insurance. That a lot of the times shops will respect that they made a mistake or that a faulty part was put in your vehicle though, and many will fix that mistake for free or at a discounted price, knowing that you came in to do the work on your car the first time around. So the important thing to remember is just go with someone you trust, or that has good ratings to make sure that you're getting your car fixed properly. Also, um, generally speaking, the damage has to be sudden and accidental to be covered. So something that might happen over time, like wear and tear. It's mostly wear and tear stuff that's not going to be covered, or rust on your vehicle. Rust happens over a long period of time and it's not going to be covered by insurance. Another part that's not covered by your normal auto insurance is going to be gap insurance. That is the cost. It's basically the difference if your car is in an accident and they're looking to pay out a claim, the auto insurance is going to pay out what the car is worth at the time. If you have a loan on it, it the loan amount that you still have left on the car may not be exactly what the car is worth. For example, if you buy a brand new vehicle and it's $20,000, when you take it off the lot, it might immediately drop to 18,000 in value. So if you get in an accident the very next day, the insurance company may only pay out $18,000. That leaves you, if you got a $20,000 loan, that leaves you with 2,000 left to pay. But some companies do provide something similar to gap insurance, and that may be an option, but usually to cover that gap there, to help with that 2,000 difference, for example, that's something that you'll want to ask the dealership when you're buying the vehicle. Again, that's not usually something that's available with private party. There are some auto insurance that offer something similar to help with that gap. So, just for some final advice here, take your time shopping around for insurance. The cheapest policy may not be the best. Pick a company that you trust, where they seem like they care about you, and the coverage makes sense for the price. Be realistic with what you can afford. A policy that you can pay each and every month is better than one you can't. Keeping coverage is more important than having a really, really great policy. It's more important to be legal on the road. And be honest when you apply and respond in a timely manner. Never try to be wishy-washy or bend the rules. It's important to be completely honest when you're signing up, and they should do what they can to make sure the policy is within your budget. And last but not least, get advice prior to making a claim. Talk to your insurance agent or give me a call. I'm always here for you guys. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day.